Moscow. Another foreign aircraft breaches Soviet airspace. Passers-by watched amazed as a Cessna light aircraft landed in Red Square. Its pilot was a young West German, Matthias Rust.
Rust himself was treated extremely humanely. Imagine if something like this had happened before Gorbachev's time. There would have been no dialogue. He would have simply been lined up against the wall and shot the next day.
Gorbachev set Rust free, but used the incursion as an excuse to dismiss several members of the Soviet High Command. Media, the fax machine, the computer, were opening up the USSR. Gorbachev and the Politburo watched satellite TV in their offices. After Olympic boycotts, the 1986 Goodwill Games were seen live both sides of the Iron Curtain. Soviet television was changing. It risked a live debate with Margaret Thatcher.
So don't you think that the concept of nuclear deterrence, in fact, invites the side that believes in it to use the nuclear weapons in the end, just to prove this threat from time to time?
Isn't a policy of conventional weapons, with the terrible bombs raining down, with the missiles, with the aircraft, with the submarines, with the torpedoes, with the tanks, with chemical weapons, isn't that based on the possibility of threat?
I felt very embarrassed for our journalists. It was so painful to watch. At first, I was a little hurt. Then I was roaring with laughter. It was on this occasion that she made so many fans.
And we're saying to anyone who dares to attack us, do not do it. You couldn't win. The result will be devastating. I think you're saying the same.
I have to say that Margaret Thatcher was one of the politicians with whom it was very important to maintain a dialogue, because she was a very strong personality and a strong politician. And in spite of us constantly arguing with her at every meeting we had, we respected each other's position.
Gorbachev's policy of Glasnost brought pop culture out into the open.
A new breed of young people was created by our intellectuals, a breed that rejected all our Soviet past. This was moral degradation. Our youth was being turned into human robots.
The Soviet people were being plunged into wrenching change.
We became particularly worried by the end of 1987. We saw that the country was not going in the direction it should. The situation of the people was getting worse and worse. The situation of the armed forces was no better.
Gorbachev reacted to growing opposition by pressing ahead with plans to reform the Communist Party.
И все-таки все то, что мы развернули через реформу, через демократию вот эту, через советы, через трудовые коллективы, через вот эти вещи все, включения, вот это только путь. К этому надо. Там уже вы, власть в натуре будете держать.
The main achievement of Gorbachev's policies was that in the space of a year or two, he made the fear disappear, as if by magic. People had lost their fear of speaking and acting freely.
If I hadn't promoted the reforms, if I hadn't tried to let the people breathe freely, if I hadn't tried to open the door to Glasnost and democracy, to stir the society, to get it thinking and acting, I would probably still be in my Secretary General's armchair today. I could have stayed there a lot longer, since I'm still quite young.
Washington, D.C. Ronald Reagan still pursued his Star Wars vision. The Kremlin now believed that it would never happen, and therefore should not delay agreement on arms reduction. Gorbachev, in the United States for the first time, had come to sign an historic treaty. His visit, seen live on Soviet TV, enhanced his standing at home and abroad.
All I'd ever seen of Soviet leaders was Khrushchev banging his shoe on the table and some old men in drab uniforms all looking like Mao Zedong, you know, and had no personality and looked like they were zombies. Here comes Gorbachev. He was wearing a good, well-cut Brooks Brothers suit and tie. He even had on a white shirt. He was outgoing. He was meeting people. He was joking. And he was getting along with people in Washington, D.C.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and the General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union.
A Russian saying Reagan had learned from Suzanne Massey now seemed appropriate.
The Russians like to talk in proverbs. It would be nice for you to know a few. And I said, you're an actor, you can learn them very quickly. And I gave him this, Mrs. Reagan was with us at the time, and she liked this one. And I said, here it is, and it was doveryai, no proveryai.
Mr. General Secretary, though my pronunciation may give you difficulty, the maxim is doveryai, no proveryai. Trust but verify.
Назначение этого...
На каждой встрече вы это повторяете.
You repeat that at every meeting.
I know of no one else of a leadership stature in the United States in those days who would have moved forward as Reagan did to engage Gorbachev, to engage the Western Alliance, to truly lead the Western Alliance, and to take us through what became, of course, a very constructive, introductory period to the end of the Cold War.
Yes. Можем даже обменяться.
I think we should change.
Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev signed a far-reaching agreement. For the first time, an entire category of nuclear weapons was to be abolished. In front of the world's cameras, the Americans destroyed their cruise and Pershing missiles. The Soviets dismantled their SS-20s. In another milestone in reducing Cold War tension, inspection teams from both sides supervised the destruction. In his last year as president, Ronald Reagan paid his first ever visit to the Kremlin. What Mikhail Gorbachev and the journalists wanted to know was, what did Ronald Reagan think about the Soviet Union now?
Well, just fine.
Do you still think you're in an evil empire, Mr. President?
No.
Он заявил, что
He said he wanted to take back his reference to the Soviet Union as the evil empire. He found a good place to announce it, right in the middle of the Kremlin. But nevertheless, he said that he was doing it not because he was wrong when he initially said it, but because by 1988, the Soviet Union had come a long way under the leadership of Mikhail Gorbachev. It had become a different country.
Why we find ourselves standing like this?
Together, the two leaders had seized their chance.